Port Adelaide were gallant. The Saints had to fight harder than they probably thought they would have at half-time. But all that matters is they get the W. They win by 14 points. There was carnage on the Port Adelaide bench.
Alrighty. Hello, darkness, my old friends. We've come to pod with you again. Oh, yes, it's therapy. It's therapy session. It's back on the CREEDCAST. After a couple of weeks of being on the winners list, we are once again on the wrong side of a margin, and it came with all the carnage that makes us cynical fucking bastards on this podcast sometimes. But good evening, my friends, joining me and Jamie in the darkness this evening as we review Port Adelaide's 14-point loss to St Kilda on Saturday afternoon. 13-9-87 St Kilda, 10-13-73 your Port Adelaide Footy Club. A eerily similar scoreline to our gather-round matchup earlier in the year. One goal exactly difference for both sides. It was 12-9-81 to 9-13-67. In gather round, it was 13-9 to 10-13, so the exact same margin, very, very similar scores for both teams. Very, very eerie for me to look at that, but alas, we are on the wrong side of it once again. Your therapist is in the house, Jamie. Good evening, mates. We're back in the doldrums. We're back sifting through the carnage of a result in Melbourne.
Good evening to you, and good evening or good day to everyone else tuning in. Wherever you may be tuning in, how good was the thought of perhaps playing in the wild card round for that fleeting moment before we checked in late to Marvel Stadium on Saturday afternoon, about 10 minutes into the first quarter. Also, how good is it to see the girls get up in a preseason win against West Coast? Let's chat about AFLW tonight. That's some good therapy for the Port Adelaide supporters out there.
Yes, yeah. Leadership groups are getting announced. And there's a good energy in the AFLW gym. So, yeah, we should. Let's just do that for the rest of the year. Or review Showdown 60 again. A bit of both.
Let's do it.
No, I'm sure there's at least a couple of people out there that are tuning in to actually hear about us talk about this game. So, begrudgingly, we move on. I guess before we get into the lines and all of those things, we got to talk about the carnage of it. And of course, there's a few to talk about, but the one that probably hurts the most with what is coming in the off season, most likely, we still always caveat these things with nothing is set in stone yet, but reading the tea leaves as every single journalist has been doing this year with Zak Butters, it made me think I was, being a cynical bastard outside of footy as well. I was randomly, just because something I do occasionally is check in on what the doomsday clock is doing, which is, for those unaware of what the doomsday clock is, it's like a theoretical clock created by the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists in 1947. I think it was a couple of years after the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists was created. And the idea of the doomsday clock is it's a theoretical analysis of how close we are as a human race to annihilating ourselves because of all the things that we fucking do to ourselves. And in January of this year, they moved to 85 seconds to midnight, with midnight being total human annihilation. And I was thinking about this because I was doing it in relation to Zak Butters, how we've kind of been just doomsday clocking ourselves towards, we all know what's going on. We know what's happening with Zak Butters. It's all in the background. But as the season goes on, us as fans, we're still just trying to enjoy it. And enjoy the ride with Zak Butters, however long that is to be. And with that injury on the weekend, it just felt like the doomsday clock on Zak Butters' time at Port Adelaide suddenly went from 85 seconds to that annihilation point, because we suddenly realised, and with the news, it seems like, well, maybe there's a half chance. But realistically, I think we might have seen him line up for Port Adelaide in our colours and go into battle for us for the last time. And that out of everything that happened on the weekend, that one really stung me, was to just that sudden realization. And certainly with the fact I wasn't able to watch live, I had to kind of just take in this information as it filtered through to me while I was working on the weekend. So how did it feel for you as you doomsday clocked yourself with the whole Zak Butters situation on the weekend?
It's an interesting question. I actually watched the game from my brother's ex-housemate's house. So shout out to Aaron, and shout out to Flynn, who won't be listening, but he's a St Kilda supporter. So thankfully enough, he cooked a lamb on a spit for Lamb Euros that afternoon. So there was some saving grace to having to watch the game in enemy territory, as you would say. Yeah. So, it was one of those watches where it was just the three of us predominantly in the house. Our partners slowly filtered in as the day kind of wore on. But it was just one of those days where I was kind of in and out of watching. I didn't arrive to his place until quarter time, and I'm not really sure. I mean, perhaps just numb to the whole situation and perhaps not particularly realizing the severity of it in that moment until, he's put on ice. It's not just a simple kind of rolled ankle, which you see people generally get strapped up and back out there, particularly as Zak Butters. So again, it's interesting because we were still in with a shot of winning it. And again, credit to the boys. They put in a fantastic second half, particularly the third quarter, and the injury came at the end of the third quarter. But you can't, in the moment, you kind of just like, all right, well, can we still win and see what happens there? And then once the game is finished, and then, you have your Dan Does Footy, and then I think maybe there was a Type Media, or there was another one of those, footy influencer pages that they're doing their montages of, Zak Butters playing his last game for Port and stuff like that, and how this can't be it kind of thing. That's when it starts to settle in, and you're like, oh, fuck. Like, yeah. Because syndesmosis, like, that word's been chucked around a lot since it first got coined, and it is a sprained ankle for those who get lost in the gobbledygook of technical terminology when it comes to injuries. But yeah, we're all kind of aware of the general length of time that players take out after having surgery on such a thing. And keeping in mind that, again, maybe in the mind of Zak Butters and wallowing in self-pity a little bit, but distraught at the situation, the syndesmosis injury was the one that caused his nerve issue going back all those years. And, maybe
Richmond,
all these... Yeah, something. Yes. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
I think it was 2021, like Richmond, we beat them in a close one, and when they were still the Richmond of Richmond dynasty, Yeah,
and perhaps, maybe that's flicking memories up in Zak's mind.
Yeah, that's not a thought I'd had until you just brought it up, but yeah, very good, salient point.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm thinking of. And also I'm kind of like, we stuck by you, nursed you through some nerve damage, Zak, you just want to repay the favor and come back next year. But no, it is a really sobering experience for him and the supporter group, putting the upcoming match to one side. Just the fact that, it would have been interesting to see how the end of the year played out, because, I saw that opinion of, it was Dom Cassisi on the Two Team Town show on Channel 7 about how, like, only legends of the club who stick through it, win premierships, play, 300 games or 200 plus games for clubs. Those are the people that truly deserve the send-offs. And this is kind of in that in-between where Zak Butters is probably going to end up 4-time Best and Fairest winner, has obviously done a lot of good things, All-Australian member while representing Port Adelaide, but ultimately, and so we assume, is leaving the club without a premiership, without, some of these things. And I get that opinion too. So it would have been interesting to see how the end of season would have played out, but just the fact that it's now cut and that's it. Yeah, it's really disappointing to make a short story long.
Yeah, that's what the people are here for. They're here for their therapy. Shout out, Kathy. Yeah, I think your brother, Aaron, shout out Aaron again, getting some shout outs early here, posted on his Instagram story one of those video packages with, I can't remember this
That's what I had
song
in
that was in the
mind.
background. Yeah, and of Connor, and it was like an interview
And
of
Zak.
Connor and Zak. Like,
Yeah.
when they got drafted together, and there's these skinny little baby face
Babies. Oh my gosh. It's funny
Zak,
how young men change over the years. Yeah, they look like babies.
They really do. It's just like, and then you think about Zak and how he immediately started playing footy. It's like, I forget that he was such a string bean, but yeah, when he posted that montage of like the interviewer being like, oh, you're going to get to play some footy together, and then it just goes into the, kind of sad music. I'm trying to think if it was like, Joe's like end of beginning or something. It was that kind of vibe, and
yeah,
just the montage of them playing together. And like, I was already sad thinking about the fact that Connor we'd possibly seen Connor's last name was Zak back in round fucking 2, and then it was like, oh, at least Zak will get the last kind of send off. Melbourne is our last home game. Essendon is the
last home game. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry.
Essendon's our last game. Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, it cuts it short, and it just makes you realize, just, again, the cynical bastard thing, just how cruel this game is. When good things happen in sport, like we talked about the Boak Bowl and all that stuff last year, like there is magical moments in sport, but they're often equalized by some just really disappointing things that just make you go, Zak, the one kind of Shakespearean aspect of it is he's gone down injured in a play that just epitomizes what Zak Butters has been so far in his career, and probably, like, obviously will be wherever he is next year and beyond. Will continue to be. It's just hard as nails. Not thinking about his future clearly in the sense of he's just going out there to play ball, and the way he, unfortunately, you look at it. I was watching the replay of the game. I was just like, Zak, you weren't getting to that one. Like, but it's just like that's him. He's going to try to affect the play no matter what. It's just unfortunate how it kind of, because he's often been a player that does bounce off of a lot of weird situations. Remember those weird knee extension things where he looked like he'd done an ACL, and then he just gallops on like later, and like he's had a weird, mostly bounce back ability, but this one, just the way the legs got caught up, it was like finally too much for his body to handle in the moment, but still doing what Zak Butters does on a football field, which is leave it all out there. So we'll get that memory, but it still is a cruel way for it to likely end for us as Port Adelaide fans supporting Zak Butters.
Yeah, what I will say as an extension of that is fuck the Marvel Stadium surface. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that also contributed to the injury when you see the turf all rustled up and scuffed up after the landing. And there was other occasions in the match where we slipped underfoot, or Corey Durden charging forward late. Was it late in the third quarter or during the fourth quarter to an apparent wide open Xavier Bammer, and he just slips innocuously. I fucking fuck that surface, man. It's fucking gave me the shits all day on Saturday. And yeah, but just going back to Zak, there's no doubt in my mind that the surface contributed or exacerbated just his foot getting caught or his leg getting caught in the deck and then twisting in the manner that it did. But yeah, like you said, he gave everything to the contest, and we'd expect nothing less from Zak. But yeah, just so many occasions, and perhaps it's a bit of sore losership. And St Kilda, and on the flip side, it's their home ground, so maybe they're used to it, but they didn't seem to be slipping over as much as we did. But fuck, I hate that surface sometimes.
It's really been like an underlying story of Marvel or Colonial or Docklands or whatever it's been over the years, ever since I still remember reading about the surface being an issue straight away as soon as the stadium opened back when I was 12 years old or whatever it was. And it is still just, it's got nothing on a good, true soul of the earth surface like an Adelaide Oval, the one that is a properly curated surface. Shit together, Marvel. We could. I'm sure we could do a whole podcast about Zak, but that might come later in the year anyway. Whenever things motor into motion. But he's not the only injury casualty. Of course, we lose Mitch even earlier than we lose Zach. So you messaged me and kept me updated with a few of these things. And obviously, we lose Mitch Georgiades to a concussion. Again, a play that he puts his all into, and unfortunately, it's a ball coming back the opposite way to where he was leading to. But you've got Jack Whitlock trying to hook it back inside 50, and it was beautiful. But and you know, he goes down, his goal streak ends, and he is concussed, and of course is out this week. The fact that we lose Mitch in the first half, Zach towards the back end of the third quarter, Lockie Jones shortly after that we realise is off for the game as well. Jack Lukosius is out there on one leg since the start of the game. So the story of the game is that we just were going, like, you know, he played the game out and had his impacts. It was just a reduced impact. So we're already kind of half a player down from minutes into the game. Mitch down is a big structural piece. So it's quite a gallant effort, which again is one of those things that goes to show structure and pressure. If you can get two things right, then you can make up for a lot of deficiencies with the way that we came back. But it just felt like once Zach went down, it was like a little bit too much for us at that point, even though we did we fought the game out okay. We get back within 3 points early in the fourth quarter, but we just, similar to that Collingwood game, once we go down so many rotations and so many key players as well in this one, it was always going to be too much.
So this game can be summed up obviously in two halves, and if you wanted to be a glass half full person, it was just really the first half of the first quarter that seriously damaged our hopes for the day, because from that point on, we outscored them on aggregate for the next 3.5 quarters. Minorly, I will say, over the next 3 quarters. But yeah, I mean, the margin at quarter time was 18 points, and we pegged that back by several behinds. But it was just a first quarter that it looked like we hadn't done a warm-up yet. And it was the first time in a while our defense kind of looked in a bit of disarray. But I say defense, but it was the team defense, because a lot of it started from up the field. We scored the first goal within 15 seconds of the start of the match. And we actually have one of the next 2 shots on goal as well after that point. We had a few forays forward that were kind of rushed or didn't net anything. But St Kilda just found themselves in paddocks of space. And no surprise, when they got their shots on goal, particularly early in that first quarter, they were all in central positions in very gettable distances from goal. And, you know, credit to Cooper Sharman, who's a bit of an unsung hero for St Kilda. A very good mark, kicked his 3 goals, bang, 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 and then that was him done. Done my job for the day kind of thing. But that's what I mean. Like, that from that point on, after they'd kicked their 4th goal of the first quarter, it was 0 points net. You know, they kicked it behind, we kicked it behind until the end of the quarter. And then that's when, you know, we actually came to play. They still outscored us in the second quarter and exacerbated that lead. But again, first quarters against St Kilda, they've done this 15 times in the season thus far. You know, we lament our first quarters against St Kilda and our slow starts, which was a theme going back during the season. But this is St Kilda's Onewood, and we clearly weren't up to date or up for that challenge when we came into this game. Like I said, we looked cold. We looked like our muscles weren't working. We couldn't chase. We looked slow. Obviously, all the things that happen when you turn the ball over and stuff like that. That's putting the first half to one side. And then, they've obviously just collected themselves at halftime. And as Port Adelaide does, it keeps pushing on. And that third quarter was very similar to the second quarter versus Hawthorn, our previous fixture at Marvel Stadium, where we're just like a dog with a bone. And it was kind of like, well, where was this? We're finally warmed up now, are we? And yeah, we made it a contest. Like you said, come within 3 points. You know, some dubious moments from that point on once we did get it to 3 points, and some unfortunate, you know, I think Josh Lai accidentally ran into Ollie Wines at one point in the battle between 3 and 9 or 8 points, and he turned it over. And Mitch Owens, like moments like that. A couple of dubious umpiring calls, of course, which you're always going to get in a game of football, but we couldn't get our noses in front, and then we ran out of petrol tickets late, notwithstanding that we were still giving it a red hot crack with barely any rotations left on the bench. So, yeah, it really is just one of those games where you're flat from the first half, and you leave at halftime, you're scratching your head as to what the fuck's going on, or are you just like, oh, well, we were bound to kind of have this lapse because we are objectively quite a young and inexperienced team? Or is it kind of like, yeah, this isn't good enough because we're going for a wild card spot now. We're going for 3 wins in a row. But they just keep drawing us back in, particularly with that third quarter. And St Kilda were the ones that looked a bit hapless at that stage. So credit to them for fighting it out. You know, JHF, and again, there was, you know, rumours of JHF pinging a hammy to a minor extent, and maybe that contributed to our acceptance of his suspension. That's, you know, that's rumor and innuendo at this point, but, you know, credit to him, giving it a red hot crack, putting the team on his back a little bit. Yeah, you just wish that we didn't give the head start that we did, and maybe we were in with a better shot late.
Yeah, which is just deja vu all over again against St Kilda, isn't it? It was the same last year when they played us at Adelaide Oval. It was the same earlier this year in Gather Round, and once again they start well and just are able to make that start count, and then obviously they just frustrate the rest of the way. And you know, it's just one of the numbers I saw at the back end of the second quarter was the pressure rating. And these aren't high numbers even for St Kilda, but it was 172 to 152. So I think 180 they say is the league kind of averages to decent pressure. So basically, we're just really, really not getting the pressure on the ball carrier or anything in the game. That 152 is an aggregate of the entire first half. I would say that the first 10 minutes of that first quarter would have had to have been low hundreds.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then that number turns around to 170, 176, 175 in the third quarter. So they're actually kind of matching us, but that's all we had to do was just match the pressure and match the effort of St Kilda, and you see what happens. Despite the fact that by the time we get to the third quarter, we don't have Mitch Georgiades on the field. Obviously, Zak Butters is soon to go down. Jack Lukosius is on one leg, but we're still matching the pressure, and suddenly the game's becoming a contest again. So it just goes to show that you brought up the Hawthorn start. It's just like, do they just go out there and their legs are really feeling heavy on that deck, and they're just like struggling to get their muscles going on that deck? Like what you know?
It's a quandary.
I wonder if part of the lack of being able to get the pressure on was just the fact that they were getting so much. I think they had 76 more uncontested possessions in the first half, let alone the fact they led by about 10 contested possessions in the first half as well. They were just, and there was a lot of it was handballs. They were handballing out quick. So they're getting players in open space, spreading the field, and it's just like half of that lack of pressure was the fact that I just don't think we could get close to them at times either in that first half, which was really just structurally one of the few times this year. I think Jarrett Healy in commentary kind of used the words, I haven't seen Port look this flummoxed in that kind of first 10 minutes. And I think we did look a little bit on our heels. Defensive structure was a bit all at sea for the first time. Obviously, that was starts upfield as well. And I just think that contributes to the lack of pressure, is that we just couldn't get close to them to even apply pressure. And that is a problem. That is a structural issue. But, I mean, it'd be interesting to see your thoughts on that. But then, again, it's nice to see that we kind of fix it going forward in the second half. Like, what you want to see if you have a shit first half is response. And that's something we probably didn't see at the back end of the Hinkley era as much, which obviously we knew we were transitioning into a new coach anyway. But sorry, again, a pleasing part of this game. Can we just not need to step it up? Can we just step it up from the start?
I mean, it seems quite simple to me. It's like St Kilda were hungrier for the ball. whether that be contested or uncontested. They were clearly working harder to find open space. And you're right, they did utilize the width of the ground to stretch us. Excuse me. It looked like we were setting up a zone that was trying to prevent them from using the corridor, but they were more than happy to just trust their disposal and take it up the wings. But then, like you said, out of chaos, they were handballing out of congestion, and they always had an outlet. There were players free, whether it be up the field or within their inside 50 area, and our defenders are kind of looking around like, who's this guy? Or whose is this guy? I mean, the pressure rating says it all. We just weren't hungry enough for whatever reason. And, you know, if you come into any game with that type of attitude, like it's going to hurt you on scoreboard, because teams are good enough to get it in dangerous positions when you're not putting anywhere near enough pressure on and allowing that rise in uncontested possession, and you're not winning contested possession yourself. You're just going to quickly get found out. We just didn't look up for the contest early as a whole, and then left our defenders to try and pick up the pieces, which proved quite difficult, clearly. But there was even like up for the contest also in offense. Like there was a passage of play where we were clearly out, and it was that double fumble where it was Logan Evans at one end of the center square, fumble, passes it on to, I think, Jackson Mead or Joe Richards even, fumbles the ball, but we were out. I think Mitch Georgiadis was open, or one-on-one at least in the forward 50, and we just made a meal of it. And that's also, you know, not locked in to the contest. It was kind of just expecting things to happen a little bit, which would have been identified and clearly did, particularly at halftime. But that's I'm just watching it, and one team clearly came in with a thirst for the contest, both with and without the footy, and one team didn't, and it was to their detriment. And unfortunately, that was us.
That's something that you see every year in AFL, and every team. Team's going to have days where they just don't quite get it right, and their mental preparation for it. But that's how you get to being a finals and a grand final contending team, is you start making sure that you're more often than not on. You know, we see Brisbane have kind of become almost experts in it at this point as to how to build their side into a season, and where they kind of start kicking into gear and being the competitive force. Like we see them being pretty good now. And, you know, we've seen us in our dominant years back under Mark Williams. You know, that one in 2004 that often comes up is the fact we lost by 96 points to the Kangaroos in one of the 5 regular season losses, and we were such a dominant force. So you do have bad days, but the problem as a young side is we're having too many bad quarters or whatever it may be, where you're just not quite on. Because we saw in the showdown, we saw that this team, when they get, and look, I'm glad they finally did it for a showdown, because we've probably lamented that a bit in the last few years as well, as not being mentally switched on at the right time for the showdown. We executed the game day preparation perfectly for that, clearly, because and everything that led up to it. So I keep trying to remind myself the last few days that going into the showdown, I think I said, you know, if we win this one, I don't care if we don't win one for the rest of the year. And that might be the case at this point. But, you know, that I'm glad we got, but again, this is, you know, the mental preparation thing that we got it wrong here, because we clearly weren't on. And, you know, we do, maybe we can start looking at the defense, because that's a good place to start. Because the question I have for you to start off there is, I don't think dropping Brandon Zak Thatcher was the wrong decision, in a sense of who you're trying to bring in, maybe the matchups as well. But he hasn't lit the world on fire, and I can understand why. But the structure was pretty good the last couple of weeks, even if he's a bit hampered in his movement. We've all seen that, and I think that's why he's just not getting the shot. But structurally, first quarter, I don't know whether it would have helped. It's just one that came to my mind when I was watching the replay. This is the first week we didn't have Asava or Zak Thatcher, and maybe just the structure was a little bit off. There was certainly some good things. Bergman was fantastic in this one, and Eli had his moments. A lot of guys had their moments down there. It just felt like, particularly early, the defensive structure felt again, as Jared Healy said, it was a bit flummoxed for the first time in a long time.
It was flummoxed, yeah. It's an interesting question. It's the unanswerable question, isn't it? Whether
giving you the
that
sliding
magnet would
doors
have
question.
made a difference. Yeah, I mean, I tend to think not, just because of the
Mhm.
ease in which the ball was moving.
Yeah.
And because I backed the changes just based on St Kilda's forward line.
Mhm.
It's a fairly medium-sized forward line. Rowan Marshall had his couple of shots on goal, but I would have expected that even if we did have, an Asava and a Lear, or a Zak Thatcher and a Lear. But apart from that, it's Caminiti and it's Cooper Sharman and Liam Ryan who kicked, I think, their first 6 goals of the game. So in my mind, a Lockie Jones, a Miles Bergman, a Logan Evans, Josh Lai to an extent, and he probably had a few moments early that he'd like back, but I'm backing those guys to go toe to toe with the likes of Cooper Sharman and Caminiti. So, does our defense hold up better with a Zak Thatcher? I probably don't think so. And particularly as the game wore on, we're probably a bit slower once the injuries start to hit too. So, if we potentially save ourselves a goal or maybe 2 in that first quarter and a half, are Saints kicking a goal or 2 more at the end as well. So it's an interesting thought experiment. And when you lose, it's normal for football supporters to go, oh, well, would this magnet have made this better or something like that. In this instance, though, I think the defenders who were chosen should have done better, but that's also not all on them either.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, is that it was coming in way too easy and the pressure upfield just wasn't there, and it just allowed it. It really left them all at sea. And I do think that the size of the St Kilda, like as the game wore on, we actually grew into being able to defend it better as well. To your point about that, despite the injuries and despite everything, they only kicked 4 goals for the second half. St Kilda after kicking 9 in the first half, so we're able to, even as we lose soldiers, into the last quarter, like we're still able to kind of get the chances to score ourselves, whilst also, trying to limit their scoring as well. And I think that was, some fairly good efforts from a lot of guys out there. And like I said, it's probably Miles Bergman's best game since, and he's taken a lot of intercept marks, 11 marks total for the game as well. His stats are probably going to get read out again later on, I would expect. Yeah, he kind of played that intercept role really well, and it's nice to see. I know there's still a lot of talk about what his future holds as far as positioning with that little midfield trice that he had last year, and we just haven't seen much of that this year. It's going to be interesting to see how the magnets fall as the next few weeks go on with everything going on injury-wise, but yeah, it just goes to show how good he is when he gets that defined role of being able to sit back and take those marks, because he is such a good overhead mark. He does play tall really nicely. Is quite a tall, big. That's why we like the idea of him as a midfielder. He can play that. He did just show that how important he is as a defender as well, and how classy he is a defender, and he reads the ball so well. And as the game grew on, he got more and more important in keeping us in the game as well.
Yeah, without a doubt, his best game for the year. And just the safety of Miles Bergman came back to the fore. Those sticky hands that we've become accustomed to, and, in his injury battles, sometimes his confidence takes a dip. But apparently, I think it was after the week in between games between North Melbourne and St Kilda, I think he might have appeared on 5AA, I think it was, and apparently he was, champing at the bit. He was kind of on Josh Carr's case, when am I going to get back in? When am I going to get back in? Which is good to know that, like, a player is eager, but they're confident in their body. The flip side to that is the Sam Powell-Pepper situation. But when a player's come back from a lengthy injury, they're raring to go. They're coming in with confidence. Like that was great to hear. And then coming into this game, it's no surprise why he performed the way he did. Great game from him. Ably supported by, Aaliyah, who, funnily enough, had more intercept possessions, not intercept marks. Miles Bergman by far outdid AA for AA there. And I thought it was another under the radar game by DBJ. He just keeps on keeping on. I think the younger guys probably had their moments, as they probably will for another little while yet, here and there. But I think those three in particular, from a true defender's point of view, Jace Burgoyne was kind of in multiple roles on the day. Another player who I thought overall had a pretty decent game, and he was third for intercept possessions on the day as well, Jace Burgoyne. So, when a game where you are talking about the two-half conundrum, always wary to heap too much praise on the defense, although we laud them most of the time because, particularly in years recent, they've had to mop up a lot of pressure and ball coming in at them, and those guys have done a fantastic job thus far into the season. They've got their flowers, that's for sure. It was just one of those indifferent games where, the likes of Bergman and Aaliyah, I thought, held their head high for most of the game. Another point on the commentary, though, and funnily enough, Jared Healy commentating, didn't hear too much about St Kilda nudging players under the ball to get marks and shots on goal rather than intercept marks. Didn't hear any of that in commentary, even though it happened. But I'm not sour about that, am I, when it leads to goals? And I thought Aaliyah was suffered at the hands of a bit of a nudge in the back under the ball at one, maybe even two stages of the game. But sour grapes.
Yeah, Jared Healy's got a weird thing against Aaliyah. I don't know. It's so.
Is he racist?
I was thinking it, and he said it. This is why we're good together, Jamie.
Moving on.
It's one of the, like you said, some of the younger fellas just didn't quite have the games that we want. It is going to be the ups and downs, but Lockie Jones getting hampered by injury doesn't help, and we just ultimately maybe a little bit too much to too few at times, but also it was just a little bit once the engine room got going, then the defense were able to structure up a little bit better, and they played better. So that's just part of it. But
I think Logan Evans again, he's had a good game. His stats look good. It's just the moments that stick in my mind there. I think he tried to bite off a kick or a kick in. He tried to bite off a bit more than he could chew. It led to a turnover, and I'm pretty sure that led to a turnover goal. I think perhaps in the first quarter, again, we weren't quite switched on. We were trying things that were outside of our scope at that moment. And perhaps that's sticking with me because he's having a fantastic third up season, Logan Evans. And as he warmed into the game, much like a lot of these players, really solidified. He's used the ball just under 76.5% for the game. But in a game where it is decided by around 2 goals, he had other options in that moment, and it's just like, why'd you pick that one?
Yeah.
Harsh,
and he's shown a propensity for those kind of turnovers at unfortunately this year, but it is also, once he gets it right in future years, it's still quite a young fellow. It's just like you sit there and go, well, this is, you want him to have that vision and that idea and that creativity. That's what's going to propel him to be a better player. It's just like he's getting a few of them wrong, and that's part of growth. Just looking at the turnover score, a score source for the game was basically mostly decided by turnover. It was St Kilda scored 8-5 to our 4-9 from turnover. Stoppage was 4-3. It's a 5-3 our way, and both teams kicked a goal from kick in. So more or less, you look at the margin mostly coming from turnover, and that a lot of that comes from that first half as well. And it's just, that's the tail of the tape there, really. And when you're not getting the pressure, when one team's putting a lot more pressure on, you're not able to execute. It's a weird one. It's probably a time to transition to midfield as well. It kind of goes back and forth a little bit. Jordan Sweet has absolute dominance from at the hit out, but we just don't transition that into. We still win the clearance battle, but it's a lot more marginal than and that's why none of us ever say hit outs equals clearance, but you still want to see that dominance. Maybe we've seen some pretty good clearance dominance games from us in recent times. You want to see that transition a little bit better, and that would have helped us get a little bit more better field position, because their ability to transition from their defensive 50 to forward 50 transition was one better than 1 in 3, but whereas ours was 1 in 5. So we just weren't transitioning as well. And so if we are even getting marginally winning clearance, but then turning the ball over too much and they're getting pressure on, and they're turning it over and getting it forward quickly, like they're getting it forward, and our ability to transition out just isn't there. Whilst if we go forward, they trust their transition game a little bit better. And so there was just all sorts of areas in this game where just not being able to get on top enough in midfield, marginal wins in midfield in a game like this, with the danger they've got behind the ball with your Nazes and co that can transition the ball, and we needed to win better in midfield. And we did okay. We didn't win enough battles in and around what, to match. Our strengths need to be get forward half game going, and we just couldn't get that going enough, with the fact that we just couldn't win the midfield battle dynamically enough. We had some great clearances. There was some great Zak Butters wheeling out of the centre clearances, but it was just few and far between. And then obviously when they turn it over, then they go forward. Like, they just had more avenues to goal, whereas we didn't.
Yeah, I think their ability to hit up targets was probably the difference from the midfield, because it's funny, we talk about bridging the gaps of statistical differences, and we actually increased in terms of clearance. We had 40 for the game, and we averaged 35.9. So, like you said, I think at times, and JHF, there's also a few that stick in my mind of, bullocking through players or shaking off players. And I think that just the difference was at stages, some of those balls were going in a bit high rather than finding targets. And, perhaps when your figurehead goes off concussed in the second quarter, that makes things a bit more difficult. But again, like, how much of these statistics are franked by the comeback? When the game's there to be won, what do those clearance numbers look like? And like you said, the hit out, like, what a game for the two rucks. Combined 57 hit outs to 20, and Viz and Sweet both. I mean, Vizentini had more hit outs to advantage than Jordan Sweet, obviously more matched up against Mitch Owen and the like. Than Sweet, who's generally going toe-to-toe with Rowan Marshall. We knew coming in that Sweet generally has performed pretty well against Rowan Marshall. Unfortunately for him, though, he kicks the 3 behinds on the day, and Rowan Marshall kicks, I think, 1-goal-1 without, just off the top of my head. So, if Dante kicks his goal, I was actually pretty impressed with Dante's game overall. When we're losing soldiers, and you want the younger guys to lift. I was particularly impressed with his second and third efforts, but also his groundwork. I thought he flew the flag for the club as well as he could have, and it was a real tick in the box of the two ruck system. Just not so much. We're more overall when we've had this situation. And they've played a lot of games together now this year. But it's been more like, we want Dante to provide a contest up forward to take the load off of Mitch and Jack Whitlock in particular. But this was more of a game where the two rucks went to work in their vocation, if you will. And then everything, and then the other aspects of their game flowed on from there, like 30 hitouts to Sweet, 27 to Viz. Like I said, 6 hitouts to advantage, 8 hitouts to advantage. Viz actually used the ball at 85.7% from his 7 disposals. So, but yeah, like I said, it was more his teamwork. It was the second and third efforts. It was the groundwork. It was bumping. It was shepherding. All of those 1%ers, that unsung hero stuff that really impressed me. And yeah, he got the reward on the day with actually taking a mark. I think he juggled it and kicked the biggest helicopter I've ever seen to get a goal. But I'll take it. If you're cruising forward as a ruckman and you're keeping your other ruck hyper accountable and you get a goal on him, again, like I said, it would have been good if Jordan Sweet could have gone, at least converted a goal, if not 2 goals, 1, but he finishes with 3 behinds, which is sad.
Yeah. Dante Vicentini has the 11 pressure acts. Jordan Sweet has the 14 as well. So, between them, they have 25 pressure acts. Vicentini, that's 7th best for us in the field. Sweet's 5th best. So, yeah, speaking to your point about what he's doing outside of his direct possession, and look, if he's only going to have 7 disposals to go to 85% is what you want with your ruckman. Outside of the fact he's obviously
it's better than 50%. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Or if he has 7 disposals at 25%, or whatever the number would be, and doesn't kick the goal. I was thinking about this when he kicks the goal, and Sweet hadn't kicked his one. I was just like, with playing the 2 rucks, it is part of the midfield chat that when you've got the 2 rucks, that one of them's going to spend some time forward, and your hope is they at least are a benefit plus for the forward line structure. But then the even bigger benefit is you want you want a goal out of your ruckman every week if you're going to play 2 of them in the modern game the way it's being played. We're kind of getting that at the moment. Obviously, it would be nice if both of them could pop up with a goal. And as you said, Jordan Sweet just a bit unlucky that he doesn't get at least one of them to pop through for him. But if it is to pop up and kick that goal is just, a good goal as it was, at a time when we were needing, there was a few good
really coming at St Kilda.
Yeah. And, you keep piling that scoreboard pressure on a team that probably thought at halftime, St Kilda, AFL team goes in at halftime 6 goals up and goes, we've got this one, but you sit there and go, this game's in our hands. So when you're watching guys like Dante Vicentini, kick them from 45, 50 and you're sitting there going, okay, these guys are really coming, and they're piling the pressure on and keeping the scoreboard pressure on to make us have to play. It is when you see 57 hitouts to 20, and you only won the clearance battle across the field by 5, and we're not winning. We just didn't dominate. We marginally win center clearance, we marginally win stoppage, but it just wasn't quite the margin required with how the rest of the game was going to be played. Smack my mic with my talking with my hands. The way the rest of the game was going to be played was probably going to benefit St Kilda more in the fact that they have just a better transition game than us, and obviously have probably a few of the better defenders to if the field position game is going to be much. So we do. It's kind of the game that required us to win clearance better, have a margin closer to the Adelaide, the dominance we had over Adelaide and stuff like that to be able to win the field position game. It is, I think Butters, and it does suck that we're not going to see the Butters Jeff 1-2 punch again, because that has been really, really beneficial over the last few weeks, and I did enjoy their games. It was a bit of a more get down and grind kind of game from both at times. They both have their highlight moments, but they still worked well together. It's just maybe, just wasn't quite. We just didn't. We wanted to be more dominant, and a side note to that, I'm throwing many things at you in just one sentence here because my brain is just rattling around with different thoughts about it. But we obviously saw Burgoyne go to Naz at the first centre bounce again, which we were both a bit leery of going into the game. But I don't think that matchup is as detrimental in this game. It's just an interesting one. He just had his way at times, and I don't think there was much that was going to be done about that. He had some kicks in this game, but I don't know. It's just I find St Kilda such an interesting matchup because it's just like they're winnable games all the time, but we've dropped the last 3 now. Just there's some superior talent in area. Just then their wing, Bradley Hill, obviously on the wing as well. It's just like they had elite talent in certain areas where we just couldn't quite match it. The midfield, obviously, we have the elite talent there, but then they've got their they're going toe for toe with some talent in there as well. And then when you get your Bradley Hills going, he was going absolute just nuts out there on the wing. And we've got Lukosius on one leg starting on the wing, and then not going there. Jacob Ware's come in for an ill Mitch Zaddo. Ewan McKinley's gone down for the year, who was our shining light. So we're kind of a patchwork game in that respect, whereas they just had match winners playing in the areas they want to be in this game, and it wasn't quite enough. It still needed to be better is where I've kind of drawn down to out of my kind of watch this morning.
Well, it clearly needs to be better because we lost. And we lose by
Jamie just hitting me with the if you score more, you win.
So what happens, right, in sport
Yeah.
is one team has one score. Yeah. What you need to know about sport, right? But yeah, this is the conundrum, I guess, and I guess it's the glass half full aspect of Port Adelaide's spectatorship this year is that we're not necessarily playing for sheep stations, so you can take the good with the bad. We have a reason to take the good with the bad. You still want to look at things objectively and go, that's not good enough. And maybe, next year or the year after, we're going, that's fucking crap. Like, you need to be better. But we're in a kind of twilight zone at the moment where we are afforded the luxury of being able to accept that, JHF and Zak, they did their thing. I thought Zak, he ends the game, one of our top-rated players, still, even just off 3 quarters.
Yeah.
But I thought at stages, he wasn't quite having the punch that he has had in recent weeks and across for most of the year, to be honest. And it was one of those games where, again, like Ollie Wines and Willem Drew have 5 clearances as well, which is equal to Zak. But the punch isn't there from them either. The tag you mentioned, perhaps the biggest cynic can look at that matchup and go, okay, we are tanking this game because we've gone the Jace Burgoyne on Nazai Wanganeen-Milera again. And that's not to denigrate Jace Burgoyne's game. Overall, I loved his game. And another one who may feature later. But the coaches clearly see something. And I guess if you're a good defender who has midfield attributes, it makes sense that you could become a tagger. And Jace Burgoyne is clearly a good defender. Some of his best games of football at AFL level have been as a defender.
Mm-hmm.
And he clearly has midfield attributes because he also plays a lot of his football on a wing or, in the midfield group, and has been exposed to a lot more CBA or inside stoppage work. But I think we rationalized it in the preview by saying in the showdown, we started that game to win. We attacked the game to take it away from the Crows off of our work. Whereas, we knew that Jordan Dawson was coming into the showdown in good form, but we held off on the tag until halftime when we just went, you know what? They're relying on this guy. We're still beating them. Let's just fucking put the foot on the throat. Whereas I thought this was a negative start to the game. That's what we spoke about in the preview. It was just you're trying to start the game cautiously because perhaps, and then whether it's subconscious, conscious, you're going, we're not sure if we can beat this guy. You're putting him on a pedestal. You put the pussy on the pedestal. And it backfired. I mean, I think, was it their first goal came from a free kick because I think Jace Burgoyne held on to Naz.
Yep.
in the centre. So that kind of
right
set the tone a
right
little
after
bit.
Burton. And we
Yeah.
just scored that goal. It's like if we just have an even contest in the middle and, you know, win one again or halve it and it comes down to stoppage, but they just get like essentially get out of jail free card right after we've just, you know, given them a little clip on the jaw, like to start the game. And it's just like, fuck's sake, you know, like,
And didn't they return serve in that regard?
Obviously they get the goal and go, okay, cool. And then they obviously just compound that pain as it goes forward there. But it's an interesting one. We didn't want to see it. I was watching the game and I kind of just was like, you know, delirium from working 10 days straight or something like that. But I kind of just like, I wonder if they're just putting him on there on Naz just so that he's got all the time in the world to just get into his ear while he's on the field and just be like, you know, these are the reasons to come to Port Adelaide. You know.
And depending on, you know, who you believe and whatnot from our Victorian Port Adelaide supporter group, you know, certain ones have been told it's a done deal, which I'm happy with. And just on the topic, shout out to the Victorian Port Adelaide supporters. Probably give them a pump up. You know, shout out to all the interstate supporter groups, and we obviously have listeners and viewers from all over the country and different parts of the world. Credit to everyone who makes the interstate games, because in true Port Adelaide fashion, they're just as parochial as the SA supporter group. And we can always hear them. But, you know, we obviously play more games in Victoria. There's probably a bigger contingent of Port Adelaide supporters from an interstate point of view in Victoria. And they always show up. And when you're playing St Kilda, who are pretty irrelevant, to be honest, as
crowd
a
was just
club.
a touch over 22,000. I just thought it was insane.
Yeah. And our Port Adelaide supporter group always bring noise, always cheer loudly and proudly, and always deserving of their flowers. Again, not to take anything away from the rest of our supporter groups across the country, because, you all do us proud. But, shout out to the Vic supporters.
I think the commentators mentioned them at one point when we were in the
They always tend to.
Yeah, I think they're always just impressed by as you said, the parochial support they give on the field.
I'm pretty sure it might have been Jared, and he said the traveling cheer squad. But
there's usually a couple.
Put it out to those in Victoria. I'm pretty sure a lot of them are like, I'm not sure how many of them are actually traveling from SA, which was the inference. My kind of perspective is a lot of them are actually residents of Victoria.
The Victorian Supporters Group. Yeah, so shout out to them. I mean, I'm going to be heading to Sydney in a few weeks to join the fans over there. So I'm looking forward to my first away game in a long while, actually. So so it'll be a shout out to the New South Wales supporters at that point as well. But it's always good to see the colours. Quite a good colourful array in the behind the goals there. But and they got their highlights in this one as well. Was there anything else in the midfield you wanted to get into before? I know we kind of broke there for the fans, so trying to think where we're at. But there's a few guys I want to talk to that had some impact in the middle as well, but we're kind of probably a bit more forwards as well. But by the way, Ollie Wine's
I'm good.
Ollie Wine's 83% disposal efficiency with his touches, so there's that. 69% game time, so decent.
Back to his dinner for two game time percentage.
Good shit from you. So forward line. The first one I want to start off with. Obviously, we've already talked about the Georgiades injury. There's not much more to say about Georgiades' game. He doesn't get his goal. He's on. He doesn't have. He obviously structurally always has an impact in that sense, but he really didn't have much in the game in this one. So he's out of the game. But the one I want to start on, Xavier Bammett. He's one of our higher rated players. Speaking of player ratings, he has the 12 touches, I think, at going at 91%. He has the 7 score involvements, which is the leading player for Port Adelaide on the field. Like, he's one of those players that when he's in the play, you notice him because he's that ruffian, bald, almost, that clipped back hair and kind of just the hulking shoulders way that he moves. He's never kind of underseen or anything like that, but he's underrated as far as his knowledge, the people that know of him around the league, being that he was a mid-season draftee. I think this is an incredible game of pressure, of tackling, of moments, of knowing where to be for the drop of the ball. He's still only, it's 12 touches. It's he kicks his one goal, which is a relatively simple one. Memory. I was just thinking of his set shot that he took that ended up in a goal that might come up later as well. But just Xavier Bammett, that's we've been seeing glimpses of this, but yeah, obviously his first game he had his moments where he kicked his goal and had some great moments, but then he goes to snap and he misses his foot, and it kind of just felt like he was playing well, but a little bit of deer in headlight stuff as well. This one, it's starting. What I'm seeing with Xavier Bammett is it's all just, he's still raw. He's going to, a full preseason this year is going to be really, really beneficial to him. But you're already starting to see just the speed of play for him, and what he's seeing is just slowing down, and he's starting to see the game. Sometimes you're seeing, a pinball when you're really not hitting well, but sometimes when things start slowing down for you in baseball, the baseball looks like a beach ball, and it's like you're starting to see Xavier Bammett start to slow down, the sport start to slow down for him, and him being able to think through it at the pace that you need to, rather than it all coming at you like overstimulated. He just seemed, this game was just a nice little bit of evolution for him, and he was really, really important to us almost winning this one at one point.
Evolution is a great word to put it, and a great wrap up by you, because he was one of two names that I put in for special mentions that come from the forward line as well. Because he was ever present. I mean, he was even featuring in that first half, playing as a forward as well, coming up the ground. Our forwards definitely had to come up the ground to taste some leather because they weren't getting it in our half of the ground too often. But yeah, just when you talk about guts and grit and trying to make an impact for your team, Xavier Bammett was straight in my notes for those reasons. And just like you said, the game, looks like it's making more sense to him and slowing down, like you said. But it's just the penchant to impact contest to contest to contest to contest. It's just that never give in attitude, and it's the DNA that obviously Josh Carr is looking for in particular players. And I think as Port Adelaide fans, we get a bit romantic because he has those kind of traits that look a bit like a combination of an Ollie Wines and a Sam Pepper, two very beloved footballers in our football club. But I was super impressed with his game, and one that I didn't truly appreciate until I watched the replay, and in particular when we were coming at St Kilda, he was ever present. Bagged himself a clearance in the end, coming up to stoppage, and trying speckies on players, and just the pressure that he put on. The words that I express can't truly do it justice and what I thought of his game, and in particular, like I said, a 12 possession game that did net the 7 score involvements, which led the team. And I mean, it was just it was 91.7% disposal efficiency. So, I'm glad that you brought him up first. The other player from the forward line, though, that I thought worked in tandem and in terms of trying to drag your team into the contest was Corey Durden. And I think those two in particular for me, with Georgiadis off the field, it was almost like maybe more so Corey Durden from a leadership point of view. It was just like, all right, well, the man is out. We got a lift. And I thought those two quite clearly had an impact on our side and turning the momentum back in our favour. Whenever there was a ball to be won, whenever there was a player to be pressured upon, those two seemed to be everywhere, or just trying to guts it out, and which is endearing. Obviously, that's why it's stuck in my mind, and obviously it's why it is stuck in your mind. It's just that guts and that determination to to wrestle momentum, or win your contest that you're involved with in whatever way you can.
Yeah, and Corey Durden was the other one on my mind as well. I just thought, I think his ability to come upfield, his link up play ability as well. You mentioned kind of a leadership quality. He shows little bits on the field where he does seem to have the ability to take on that kind of on field. Like the way he plays is that there's a leadership quality to how Corey Durden plays, and I wonder what he's like around the group and what future, I'm not talking future captain material or anything like that, but it's just like he seems like the kind of guy that could be in like an extended leadership group kind of thing, because he just seems to lead by example. Plays, and I mean, he has the 5 score involvements himself, obviously a couple of those goals, but when you're looking at Xavier Bammett and Corey Durden having 12 score involvements between them, it's just like those are good areas for two players. That obviously Durden coming in at the back end of last year and like a quiet sort of off the side sudden deal, and then Bammett coming in as a mid-season draftee. If you wouldn't be looking at St Kilda in a 14-point loss, and while not great, is battling for finals contention. You're looking at Bammett and Durden being 12 score involvements between them. You would have been like, well, who were those guys? This time last year. So this is what is kind of the baseline of what is a team that is absolutely beset by injury at this point. Like, I mean, before this week, we're already at the top of one of those Instagram pages that's doing the Medicare ladder of, of games, rebates of games lost by injury, and we're top of the table for the amount of games of players that play games have lost through injury. So we're right at the top. We're top of the pops and still competing, and it's because we've got a coaching group and a structure that's setting these guys up to go in and succeed. And obviously, we're identifying the talent and picking the guys out there to go out and play. And we identified Bammett as a mid-season draftee that could come in and have an impact pretty quickly. But what's even more pleasing again is he's improving every week, which is what you want to see. And Durden's just continued to hum along. But I think this is the kind of game where Durden does get his goals, which is nice. We love seeing it. We've loved seeing it continually this year, apart from that one annoying week. Otherwise, it'd be an incredible streak at this point. But what Durden's doing as well is he's finding a way to impact the play outside of that, which is what you were kind of alluding to. And it's just like that's so important for a player in his role to find possessions and find ways to impact the play outside of scoring goals. We often talk about that role being a thankless one, but Durden's finding ways every week to be a key contributor, outside of obviously he's usually popping up with a goal or two, but he's contributing.
Whether he's outnumbered or not, either, he finds himself in 2-on-1s and still manages to halve contests. And that, when I was talking about the surface before, there was that instance where I think it was Jace Burgoyne booted it off the deck on the wing, outer wing, and then it got to Corey Durden in a 2-on-1, and that was when, he kind of rushed it forward, punched it forward, slapped it forward, whatever it was, and then he gathered, and I don't think we could see on the vision, but apparently Bammett, funnily enough, was open on his own in the forward line. Durden collects the ball and then inevitably slips on that fucking surface. I think he gets tackled or he gets a quick kick, and by that stage, St Kilda have been able to set up and nothing comes of it. But I remember, I think there was a game at Adelaide Oval as well. Might have even been nominated for a Wilson Gray. Just his work, a small statured person, getting involved in 2-on-1s and making his presence felt, which shows the not just the dog in the fight, it's the fight in the dog. They've both clearly got that in spades. But also from a player acquisition point of view as well, while you were talking earlier, like obviously Durden came in the trade period, but even still there was a bit of, I don't know if conjecture or trepidation was the word about that in regards to him. We were fairly bullish, obviously, in our preseason shows. But then Bammett as a mid-season recruit as well, a mid-season draftee, people out there in social media, Port fans, and, I'm not throwing shade on anyone, people that keep tabs on, your under-18 competitions and things like that and potential draftees. And, I remember when we picked Bammett, there was a bit of, slight conjecture. It wasn't, hysterical or whatnot. But, with draftees, there is always the people who do keep their finger on the pulse of those things. They have their opinions on who, clubs should draft, or more specifically, who we should draft. So when, you pick up someone like that, you're like, well, his highlights look good, but I'm enough on a podcast. I put my faith in the list management group and the recruiting managers to do their job. So then when you see a player like Bammett warm into AFL standard football and at AFL level, and we sit back and we go, I think we found a player. Like, nothing that he has done has kind of gone, I'm still not sure. You obviously want to see players continue in a certain trend line. I mean, continually improve and evolve. But yeah, I sit here going, I think we've genuinely found a player from a mid-season standpoint as well, which is, even more pleasing.
Yeah, he's 19 years old. That's the thing. He's 19 years old, just been thrust into an AFL system halfway. Obviously, he was playing at North Melbourne VFL and obviously played in some fairly high profile underage systems, but like still just being thrown into an AFL year halfway through is a significant step for any player to kind of mentally manage, and he's kind of taken that challenge really, really well. And then obviously, improving week on week. He's going to obviously have, an exit meeting at the end of the year, and they'll talk about, there will be a little bit of reflection in the off season. Then he gets to come in with a full preseason with it, kind of everything that he's learnt from this year already, and then just see what comes of that. Getting the body right. You think about the kind of prototype body he is. Like, if it starts throwing a little bit of weight on in the next couple of years, just like, the world's his oyster. I'm really, really excited. And this game was, again, a real highlight for me in the early days of Xavier Bammett. And it's kind of when you see these kind of games. And this was a tough game. This was a grind. It was an away game. Obviously, maybe playing at home in Melbourne, and maybe, a little bit of comfort there. I don't know. But
had that thought.
It really looked like it's all starting to kind of click for him as far as the early years go. And I'm really, really excited to see how that goes going forward. Probably the other big, high profile note is it's always good to see Jason Horne-Francis pop forward and get his goals and two very, very good goals that they were. It's such a good out for our structure that, he can just float forward and have a tangible impact. Outside of that, obviously, I think he's going to come up later again too, so I'm not getting too much into his stats, though you can feel free to talk about anything in particular of that. But outside of that, it's the forward 50 entry, it's the field position, we don't. And then obviously it goes to show, I think, how important Mitch Georgiades is to the structure. It's just like, Jack Whitlock just doesn't find enough of it, but it's not totally on him. He still tries and gets around things, but obviously misses his chance that he has at a goal, which is an unusual miss, I think, for him. It's just one of those games that didn't quite work for the tall forward structure, particularly with Mitch Georgiades going down early. We had to kind of work our way around that. And I think it's a credit to what we did in the third quarter that Jason Horne-Francis goes forward and plays kind of, key forward for a bit there and we find goals. It's an awkward game to talk about forward structure when your star forward and one of the best in the league goes down in the first half. It's just like you can't really criticize too much. And then Jack Lukosius, who you would have thrown forward if you could.
Yeah. Now you're hiding him.
So you're kind of hiding him on the field just so he can, have a contest here and there if he can. But this is like, so yeah, your two guys that could play, big forward are fucked. One's off the field, one's on the field, but not on the field, so to speak. So Jason Horne-Francis becomes, the prototype of the experienced key forwards is basically Jason Horne-Francis, because Jack Whitlock's the next one out there, and he's still, he's obviously developing. And you can see when him and Georgiades are working together the last few weeks, we've raved about it, but you just saw just how important, one player going out can affect the structure so much. And I think, there's a mulligan there. He should be finishing that one he takes a shot at. That's just part of it. But I don't know if that's similar to how you're thinking about the rest of kind of forward line dissection this week, because it's just I find it hard to criticize too much more of it when so much attrition happened to it in that game.
Yeah, well, I mean, credit to the coaching group for making that change in the third quarter, and it was a suite of changes to get us back into the game, and I think the biggest impact was Jason Horne-Francis up forward, so backing in those midfielders that we were talking about who weren't quite getting it done in the first half, but putting it more on them to do their work and target Jason Horne-Francis, even taking on the likes of Cal Wilkie, who will probably find himself with an All-Australian jacket at the end of the year. And Jason Horne-Francis, who quite rightly would have had 3 goals in the quarter rather than 2 goals, 1. Jack Whitlock, we've used the word evolution a few times now. Him and Joe Berry, like, it's rare that you get a shot after, say, quarter time, half time, 3/4 time siren. We had 2 shots in dead time. And the evolution is put them through, give your side momentum going into the break. And again, we lose a game by 14 points. Excuse me. You have 2 shots on goal within the game during dead time when the opposition can't reply to you. That's the evolution. And I mean, Jack Whitlock was fairly close, point blank range, just about. You could see how dejected he was. And you can imagine from the feedback that we hear in how much work he puts in and how much he loves the contest. It was written all over his face, as it would or could or should be when you miss a shot like that. And Joe Berry was the same. 3/4 time siren too. He finishes the game with 1 goal, 3, 1 miraculous goal, obviously. But an almost game in terms of just having that real impact. Flip that around, and we're talking about him as potentially one of our best players on the ground, just from an output point of view. And unfortunately, still at a stage of their careers where you go, oh, they're young. The evolution is that they put those away, but that's what we need in those moments. And when your figurehead is down, you want those players to lift, and unfortunately, they couldn't get it done. Jack Whitlock also found himself moving up the ground later in the game to get his hands on the footy. I thought we could have probably done that a bit sooner, because it's something that I thought we did really well in the showdown and against North Melbourne. But for whatever reason, it really wasn't working for us. And in particular, St Kilda had their defensive setup dialed in, and again, a Ross Lyon team. It's no surprise, but they really pressed us from a man-on-man point of view close to the kicker in our defensive 50. They had their man-on-man set full press, but then their zone kind of spread behind that next contest, which really hemmed us in. But what I would have liked to see, particularly because we had Sweet, Dante, and Jack Whitlock, I feel like we didn't take advantage of that height difference as much, or it didn't seem to be being utilised as much as we did, particularly in the showdown and the game against North Melbourne. And like I said, Jack Whitlock later was coming up to offer that transition piece, and I'm pretty sure it was even mentioned in commentary, like, that's what should be there to be used for, or, it's a good move to do now, but perhaps should have been used earlier in the game. I'm not quite sure, but I believe that it might have been a discussion point, because I think we did kick it to him and he took a mark, but just a way to get him into the game. Like you said, if Rich goes down, if you're not impacting on the scoreboard, getting up the field can, help in those 1% ways.
Yeah, and particularly with the fact that we were really struggling to transition the ball and get some of those marks where we needed them to, where he's shown a propensity to have a pretty good skill at that too. So, yeah. Other than that, like the forward line, it's just I think Joe Richards had a couple of pops at goal. It would have been nice to see him pop, but it's just the one funny one was that Logan. Do you think you have to assume the Logan Evans goal was touched with the way both reacted? But it's just funny that it's just a player trying to be as honest as possible. Yeah, I just thought it was just a funny one to touch on to finish up on the forward line before we get to segments and all that. It's just watching the replay, I was just like, and I'm watching the couple of they didn't have really any real good angles of it, and the few angles I saw, I actually didn't see anything definitive, and I'm like wondering. But Logan Evans was adamant, like the way he reacted was like, "Oh gosh, darn it!" And then like he starts calling, "No, it was touched." And it's just like goal umpires are like, "No, well, our call is goal, and we don't see any evidence to overturn it." And it's funny. We talk about walking in cricket a lot, obviously, as guys that grew up with Adam Gilchrist and like kind of those notions of honesty. And it's just like had in football, it's just like, well, the player can be honest, but it doesn't matter sometimes. It's just the umpires. Yeah, it'd be funny if they actually did find an angle of it. And it's just like, because I didn't see a finger move or anything like that, but it must have been a sound that he heard. But the thing is, it's kind of like cricket. You sometimes hear a bat on the pad and you think it's the ball hitting somewhere, and it's just like, maybe Evans just heard a sound at the right time, but maybe it wasn't that. I don't know. I wonder that's kind of what my brain was thinking. It's nothing important to the game in the grand scheme of things, but I thought it was interesting in a close game that our player was just straight up saying, no, it's touched. It's just like, no, just box a little bit.
Yeah,
like,
poker face.
I respect it. Like, love Logan. Like, love the honesty. But you're showing a little bit of propensity for the dark arts at times. Like, we enjoy that. Like, keep that going. But like, the more I saw it, the more I was just like, maybe it was a goal, and maybe Logan just heard something else, because I genuinely didn't see an angle that showed anything conclusive to me at all. Like, usually,
it's
one
hard.
of them shows something. Yeah. But yeah, in a close game, I'd like our players just to fox a little bit on those decisions and not give too much up straight away, because next time, the umpires might go with the soft call, or soft calls are behind because the player thinks it's touched, and then you look at it and go, there's no real evidence, but the soft call was this, and it's just like, that could cost us a grand final. Yeah, that's the worst scenario.
Yeah.
Clearly, I've already been disaster thinking a lot out of this game. With me starting off talking about doomsday clocks and all that. So,
true.
This is what a delirious brain does after a game such as this. It saw so much carnage and turmoil, and of course, just a frustrating loss as well. Did you have anything else on the game in particular? We shall move onward, dear boy. Before we get into the segments, of course, a shout out to, if you're listening, watching, however you may be consuming the podcast, we do appreciate you as always. The Dyed in the Wool fans that are here every week, we love you, and we appreciate you tuning in as you always do. Whether you be on Spotify, YouTube, whatever your usual point of call is for this podcast, maybe find another spot just to give us some like and subscribes there as well. If you're a Spotify listener or an Apple Pods listener, but you have a YouTube account, jump over there and give us a subscribe on there as well. Helps the algorithm feed the podcast out, and vice versa. If you're a YouTube watcher, which we know there's a few of you that regularly pop up in the YouTube comments, and we do appreciate the comments there as well. If you have a Spotify or Apple account, get over there and follow and subscribe on there as well, and keep the numbers rolling. It is
drop a heart in the comments.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, you get into the comments. We do love it. Of course, get around the socials: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all those areas. We're on there. Of course, we're about to get the segments, the Wilson Gray and the Goal of the Week, and those we're recording here on Tuesday, the evening of 14th of July. The video packages for the upcoming Wilson Gray and Goal of the Week nominations will be up on the Instagram stories on between around 7 p.m. on Wednesday, the 15th of July, and we'll be there for 24 hours from there. So get around there for the votes, and of course, you're about to hear our nominations for those awards, which of course, as always, we start with the Wilson Gray.
Down, Gray doing brilliantly, getting through to Monfries. That's Gray at his best.
Wilson kicks hard and kicks Crawley.
Robbie! Let him entertain you!
All righty, Wilson Gray Award this week. Jamie, you do get to go first this week before we get to your nomination. The winner from last week's vote on the Instagram stories was a pretty one-sided one. But again, I always say we throw these ones up that have a real good lean one way, but there's still always some votes going the other way. So we do appreciate those that appreciate both nominations. Last week's win was, of course, the moment from the North Melbourne win in which Josh Lyer chased down Colby McKercher and then Ren Colby McKercher flat out down a dead-end street into Lockie Jones and Logan Evans. And, of course, I was just talking about the dark arts of Logan Evans, just absolutely giving him the fucking jumper punches into the ground. I loved it. 77% of you lovely people on the Instagram stories voted for that one over the nomination of one of Burgoyne's, a couple of very, very good Jace Burgoyne intercept marks over Todd Larkey. Where did Todd come from? Nick Larkey. Jace Burgoyne. So so I was glad to see 23% of the people out there voted for that one. But
made Nick Larkey his bitch in that fourth quarter.
Really did. There's a couple of them there, which was really, really fun to go back and try to find for the packages. But Jamie, you get to go first this week. So what do you got for us?
What have I got for you and everyone else? On the topic of Bam Bam Bamit, early in the third quarter, I've written here, a double effort causes a turnover to JHF. Shot on goal. I believe he's manning the mark, but the St Kilda player doesn't come back off the mark very far. And I think he's able to either smother the ball or he kind of tackles the receiving player. It's a bit hazy. I watched the third quarter first. So this replay for me was very jumbled around. I think I went third quarter, fourth quarter, second quarter, first quarter. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. There's a bit of behind the curtain.
There's a Tarantino fan for you there. This is like
yeah, exactly. Non-linear is my weapon of choice or movie of choice. So Bama affects that portion, and then a bit of chaos, collects the ball, and then enters the ball inside 50, which finds JHF to kind of get the momentum rolling a little bit. I've got it at 17 minutes and 45 on the clock. I believe that's the shot that JHF actually misses, though, unfortunately. But it was just a nice bit of double effort play by Xavier Bamit.
To find Marshall in the middle of the ground. Now they're off.
Mayara gone. Wilson, Hall, Hill. Good effort by Bamit. He read it. The handball receiver was going to come and force the turnover. So a chance for Port Adelaide. They're free now inside 50. Butters just has to turn. He'll see Horne-Francis, and they get it. That's more like the Port Adelaide we know.
Great pressure in the middle of the ground by the power. Stopping the overlap handball.
It certainly was, and that was actually top of the pops of my shortlist as well. Yeah, it's the handball. He's manning the mark on the handball on the guy that dishes off the handball because he just watches the handball receive. It's Bradley Hill that takes the handball receive. It just jumps right on him and tackles him, and he affects the turnover. So yeah, it's a really, really great moment of the locked in we were talking about with Bam Bam. He's locked into the contest, keeping an eye on it, and doesn't hesitate. And in particular, I thought it was impressive considering, obviously, one of those moments in that Sydney game where a little bit of inexperience shone in his. We both agreed that the fucking whistling bullshit with the umpires, it's overcomplicated, and it was a highlight moment for that. But considering he's had some moments,
Carlton
with that
fans feel that pain out of this round of football as well.
I do that. I think I watched part of that game and then gave up on it pretty quickly.
Or just as a tangent, Matt Stevic, and I'm sure a lot of people watching or listening have seen the video, but Matt Stevic, of all people, one of the best umpires, actually, objectively, he calls play, and I think it was Adam Chera shifts off the mark, and then he still has the goal to 50 him,
fuck off.
which has been widely, kind of criticized now because he's calling. He's not saying move along or something or move it on. He's saying he's in the motion of calling play on, and he still 50s him for moving. Pretty harsh, but great callback though on Bamit. Just learned it.
Yeah. No, I love Bamit's his ability to lock in on the play is good. And this is going to be Bam Bam double feature this week, which is really, really fun.
Okay.
I've gone with, it's another moment a few minutes later in the third quarter. I think it's just under 14 minutes to go. It's when he locks in and we're really putting the pressure on, and Liam Stocker's taking the ball on close to the point line, just in front of our point line and the point post. And Bamit just locks in on him and tackles him right over the line. And I think Stocker's actually lucky to probably get away with not a holding the ball one, because he kind of just holds possession and lets himself get tackled over the line for what essentially is a rush behind. But it's again a moment of Bammett just applying pressure and not allowing an inch of space in a moment where, Stockers maybe taking the handball. I think it was handball or kick received there, and probably just hoping to get a kick out of the defensive line, and Bammett just locks in and speeds in. And there's a couple of moments that show his ability to move quickly and apply pressure quickly and have the speed to play AFL football. It's one of those things that sometimes when you bring these guys out of mid-season drafts or whatever, one of the things you're wanting to see is their ability to not just have the skills to play the game. You've got to have a certain degree of speed and ball read and stuff like that. And these two moments are really, really highlight.
Try and create something dirty. He's been good. Tumbles the ball. It could bounce anywhere. Silvani tracks it. Or Stocker has to be careful. Bammett all over him. And he had the safety of the behind line.
He did. Bammett nearly needed to grab and pull him back and keep him in play.
Yeah, he was clearly tracking that play between St Kilda's chain of disposal, because he came from like 10 meters away to lock down on Stocker. And as the commentary team said, like if he'd have pulled Stocker inbound on the tackle, it probably would have been holding the ball. But he actually saved Stocker by putting him into touch, as it were, quote unquote.
Yeah.
But yeah, great call on that one.
Yeah, no, I loved it. And he was the sixth best rated player on the field for that third quarter, which is quite impressive. I mean, he's actually one of the higher rated players in the field for the entire game. I think he's
sixth, actually.
Sixth highest rated player on the field for the game itself as well. So, which is just a great little note for Bammett, who there's been a couple of games this year that we've actually kind of highlighted that he's been okay. But I think there was one game where he's actually the lowest rated player on the field for both teams. I can't remember if it was the Showdown or Kangaroos. It was one of the games in the last 2 to 3 weeks that Bammett was the lowest rated player on the field for both teams. Out of all players that played in the game, he was lowest rated. I think he was -3 for the entire game. And I was like, he did a couple of things. Like, that's what my notion was. But player ratings being what they are. But player ratings being what they are, it's just like, this. Yeah, I think this player rating is a fair reflection on kind of the underrated kind of impact he had in the game. So, but is fairly reflected in our Wilson Gray nominations here, I think, with the fact that it's Bam Bam double feature. I will say honourable mention. I wanted to put it in just for tugging at the heartstrings, but I felt like it was probably a little bit too much, like just the Zak Butters attempt, mainly because of my emotions out of it. But I was like, no, I can't fucking do that. That's like, it's just like
hormonal.
Exactly. It's the time of the month because Butters got injured. It's just like a part of me was just like, I don't know if I'm ever going to get to nominate Zak Butters or Wilson Gray again.
Yeah.
I'm in a glass case of emotion. The man punted Butters.
Time to say goodbye.
Let's just get to the goal of the week while I cry off screen here for a moment.
Monfries has kicked a goal. Unbelievable. Haven't seen anything like that. It's gone at right angle.
Flashpoint. Stevie Modloff. What a time. He is floating on air now.
Alrighty, goal of the week. I'm still emotional, but we'll get through this, people. We'll get through this together. I get to go first this week. Just a note: last week's winner, I think it was Jamie's nomination. I think was Jason Horne-Francis, taking full advantage to go forward in a kind of odd moment of the game against Kangas last week, but he was the one that just recognised, played the whistle to its merits, and kicked a crucial goal from 50, bombing us in a game in a moment where the Kangaroos were really, really driving at us. So a big Jason Horne-Francis goal with 67% of the votes over the Durden kind of clutch dribbler goal that kind of helped us break the back of the Kangaroos last week. So a pretty dominant voting win there as well. Of course, again, as a reminder, these will be up in the Instagram stories on Wednesday evening for you to vote on both the Wilson Gray and the goal of the week that is coming up. And I am doing what we do sometimes and take the low-hanging fruit, although there's a few good ones in this one. I did think about this one a little bit, but I was just like, this one, I've got to go with it. Fourth quarter, Jack Lukosha. It's a Xavier Bammett again. Xavier Bammett popping up in the play. He takes a snap kick from the pocket and kind of just cooks it a little bit too well, and it comes back in towards the points area closest to him taking the kick. And Jack Lukosius, in an incredible moment of ingenuity, just recognizes the moment to just punch it back into play, which is just something you don't see too often. And it clearly hadn't crossed even close to crossing the line. Punches it back into play right in front of the goals where Joe Berry is, Berry on the spot, and taps it through for what is essentially a tap in. But the entire aesthetics of the play, there was a couple of Saints, like you did have to flush the tap in whilst also avoiding a couple of potential touched on the line kind of moments. So an incredible goal, one of the more unique goals I've ever seen Port Adelaide score ever, just with the way it happened. And one I'm very, very happy to nominate for Goal of the Week.
Can he nail it?
Already kicked one today.
I've seen a lot of that this week.
Lukosius has remarkably kept it in. And Berry with the volley.
And in two, look at that. So good from Lukosius.
Joe Berry, right in the spot.
And for the third time.
Anyone would be happy to nominate that one. You're almost duty bound to nominate that one. And it's one of those weird ones where like that should be in contention for Goal of the Year, but they always attribute Goal of the Year to a singular player, whereas this is like a good team goal. But a good team goal should still, like, they should have a team Goal of the Year, because that would definitely be up there. And on first glance, I thought Lukosius actually headed it back in. And I was like, that's so funny. I was like, World Cup fever to the max. Like, we're seeing a lot of Golazo goals within this World Cup period. Coincidence? Again, I brought that up previously. I don't know. But yeah, initially I thought Lukosius headed it back in just because his head and his arm kind of move in the same motion. But he clearly taps it back in with his hand, and Berry, does the job.
If that had actually happened, like if he'd actually headed it back in, I would have been like fucking I would have been Vince McMahon just falling out of my chair, just fucking like, it's fucking.
But it's also like, why would you do that as well? Like, if it doesn't get like what. Why'd you do that? Anyway,
killing Jamie here.
I'm choking on my own joy. Well, I mean, it's a tough second up because that's a clear front runner. So everyone who votes for mine, I'll buy you a beer, maybe even a 6-pack, or a nice bottle of Chianti. Does that make me sound like a cannibal? I don't know. Let's move on. But what I'm trying to say is every other choice almost seems like the second choice. So because I'm going to lose, I'm just going to go with Aliir's goal because fuck yeah, Aliir getting up and having 2 shots on goal in the same quarter, but making sure of the second. And as Chad Corns or Kim Dillon said on SENSA, like, if anyone wants to look at a set shot routine, look at Aliir, because they were talking to Joe Richards. Yeah, that's right. Because he seemed to do pretty well with the set shot goal kicking Aliir. So there you go. And anyone who votes for it, hit me up.
Just 6 for his career. Aliir's got it. And Port Adelaide continue to make a charge. Once again, they get it back to 3 points.
5 as well on the way back.
That was Jack Higgins again. The umpire said at the stand because he was closest, but he ran out of the area.
There we go.
Shout yeah, palm me in a pint.
Jamie's out here buying votes like a Republican.
Corruption. I have a new crypto coin too.
Whatever way you need to win. I'd love to. I love to see Aliir win a goal of the week at some point as well. So I wouldn't be against it. I might vote for it and let you buy me a 6-pack of beer. Anyway, a couple of good goals there. I want to be honourable mention Jason Horne-Francis. Both of his set shots were immaculate.
Absolutely.
The second one was incredible as well. And yeah, we talked about him having maybe just a bit of a case of not quite the yips, but just a little bit wayward, probably 12 months ago, and maybe at times this year. But by and large, his accuracy has been quite reasonable, and he's particularly really dobbing some of those tight angle ones, and probably been, as far as guys that have taken a lot of set shots this year, he's probably been the most reliable out of everyone, including Mitch and Witters. So yeah, shout out to JHF, and of course Durden's goals were very, very nice as well. Probably worthy of a goal of the week nomination in other weeks as well. But so there were some nice ones, but I think unfortunately, I took the kind of low hanging fruit and left Jamie with just going with
when it's there.
Yeah, you gotta take it.
Now it's time for the CREEDCAST Player of the Year voting.
Player of the Year votes, of course, 5 through 1 from both of us. 5 being best on ground, 1 vote going to our 5th best on ground. We don't know who each other are voting for each week before we throw these ones up on the podcast. So Jamie gets to go first this week. What do we got?
What have we got? We have 1 vote. Almost player of the podcast. 1 vote goes to Xavier Bammett. After the pump up that we've given him, it seems a bit harsh to just give him 1 vote. But in totality, 12 disposals, 6 contested. 10 of those were kicks at, like I said, 91.7% disposal efficiency, just over 300 meters. 3 marks, a goal assist. Who gets the goal assist in that very goal? It's probably Lukosius, but a punch isn't really a stat, so... 1 goal for Bammett, 7 scoring involvements, like we said, led the team. 3 inside 50s, 3 tackles, 11 pressure acts, 2 1%ers. Keep going, young man. My 2 votes goes to Jace Burgoyne. Gave him a bit of a pump up earlier. 20 disposals, 7 of which were contested, 8 of which were intercepts. 15 kicks out of his 20 disposals that went at 95%. So again, we've discussed his disposal efficiency, wanting him to show some authority. 95% efficiency is pretty darn good. Just under 300 meters, 10 marks, 5 intercepts. He too had a goal assist and a goal. 5 score involvements, 5 inside 50s, 13 pressure acts. Butters comes in at 3, off of 3 quarters. Like I said, he ends up being our 3rd rated player on AFL player ratings. 26 disposals, 69% disposal efficiency, 493 meters gain, 6 marks, 5 score involvements, 5 clearances, 6 inside 50s, 4 tackles, 11 pressure acts, and 2 1%ers for Zak Butters. So even though he only played 3 quarters, I still thought he made a big enough impact to be 3rd best on ground. My 4 votes, and this is probably where it probably gets a bit contentious. My 4 votes goes to JHF. 23 disposals, 10 contested, 6 ground ball gets, 350 odd meters gained, 5 marks. He too had a goal assist with his 2 goals won. 6 score involvements, 8 clearances, 4 from the centre, which is where he's really putting his name up in lights in the competition. 3 inside 50s, but 3 rebound 50s too, working hard both ends of the ground. My 5 votes, and so there's some definite honourable mentions that I'm sure Dave will get to that are unlucky to miss. Funnily enough, in a game that we lost, and isn't AFL football beautiful because we have games where we can painstakingly do our 5 and then even in wins, I suppose.
Yeah.
But there's a few players that probably unlucky to miss out on votes. But my 5 votes, to cut to the chase, is Miles Bergman. 21 disposals, 10 intercepts, 16 kicks going at 71%, 607 meters gain, 11 marks. Like I said, 8 of those were intercepts. He had 3 clearances on the day as well, which I think went a bit unnoticed. 7 rebound 50s, 2 1%ers, and he had 2 contested defensive one-on-ones that he did not lose, either of them. I think, you posed the Brandon Zerk Thatcher question earlier. in this regard, if Bergman's not playing, I think we're probably suffering a few extra goals on the day. Definitely one or two. And I think, just when the game was there to be won, which is in the first quarter and in the first half, I think he was holding us together the most out of that defensive group. And he didn't let up as the game wore on either. He had a consistent game, and clearly his best game for the year, I thought, and deserved punching up to five votes.
Yeah, no, very, very fair enough. I had a lot of some contention in myself trying to figure out my votes, which I'll get to here shortly. It's Bergman's like 90% time on ground, very, very good numbers as well for kind of how well he was playing. My vote, so the one I had Bammett as an honourable mention for sure. So I'm very, very glad to see you got him in your votes. So my one vote, which is different to yours, is I got DBJ in there. Yeah, there's a 21 disposals, 7 marks. When you did, we've shouted out a little bit. I think you started when in our defensive chat just said, someone who's been playing quite well. So yeah, he had. It's a tougher game with the fact we weren't transitioning well, but he's still holding up down there. He's getting his 20 disposals game or more every game, having an impact, disposing of it reasonably well. I think he still went it. He went at 76% in this game. Has his 7 intercept possessions, only a couple of scoring. Probably doesn't get the meters gained or anything like that he's had in some other games. Sometimes not his role. The way he just plugs in and plays the role he needs to. Like Bergman obviously had the 600 meters gain, so he's taken on some of that responsibility a little bit. But Burn Jones still finds a way to have an impact as well, which I found I really really appreciated. I'm just a DBJ guy, so I've just just personal bias and whatnot goes into it. It is genuinely looking at his game and going, look, I want to reward that. So. But Bammett was an honourable mention for me because I was really, obviously, as we both talked about, we were both clearly quite captured by his game, and I'm very, very glad to see you get him into your votes. Aaliyah, I think, had some really, really nice moments as well. And I thought about him at times. I actually genuinely was in a similar vein to Bammett. Corey Dern's one that I would have loved to have gotten into my votes as well. Just simply based on impact as well. So it's got the Durden Bammett impact in that forward line that we kind of talked about in tandem in the forward line. It was very much a thinking in my votes as well. But ultimately, I boiled down to the ones I've gotten. So I've obviously nominated DBJ with my 1 vote. I had Bergwijn in at the 2 spot as well, and I had Butters in at the 3 spot as well. I had Bergman in at 4, but as you kind of said, it was you said contentious. I genuinely almost had Bergman best on ground, so it was nice to see that we kind of flip flop on the Jason Horne Bergman or the
the return, the stunt doubles.
Yeah, we're gonna have to share the kick it forward video again tomorrow on the socials. I think with that. Because who knows? Maybe I just got the wrong person in the wrong spot in my votes because I couldn't recognize which one was which. Shout out to the advertiser.
Easily done.
South Australian journalism. But yeah, so Bergman's in my 4 spot. Jason Horne-Francis in my 5 spot. I think if Horne-Francis hadn't kicked the 2 goals, maybe that might be that. It's just like when he has the impact he does. He has the 8 clearances. He's getting some really nice clearance numbers, both from the centre and stoppage. Pops up with a couple of goals. That pipped it for me. But Bergman was. It's a really, really nice to return to form. That you've got Bergman as your best on, and I was very, 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 very close to giving him best on myself. I think that's after in different years so far, and one in which we were genuinely like, I think we used the Space Jam losing powers analogy at one point for Bergman just dropping marks, like he just looked to shell at times earlier this year. So the fact he's brought back into this kind of form is really, really pleasing. I know it's the back end of a year that's not, kind of just going to peter out at some point. But as far as his prospects going into next year, this is a good form. If he can just get a run of form and run of games together at the back end of the year and play some good footy, that's going to be incredible for us as we go forward into next year. So, really nice to see that and out of the totality of our votes, he's getting nine votes essentially out of our coaches' vote system that we do here as well. So love it. Good gear. as we wrap up and head towards this weekend. After the carnage of the last weekend, we get the ladder leading Fremantle Dockers coming to Adelaide Oval. Port Adelaide are $10.50 outsiders with a line of 47.5 points on Sportsbet. Of course, we're not endorsed by any betting companies, nor do I want to be, but sports betting odds are an interesting way to see how people are looking at the game from the outside, from a bookie's perspective, in which their literal job is to try to work out how to make money off of results, which means looking at games in a forensic analysis way to figure out how they read the game. And it just goes to show the impact that air injuries are going to have on this game, is how the bookies have gone. Now, this Port Adelaide team has been one of the tougher teams to beat this year, but they are suddenly $10.50 outsiders, which in AFL betting terms, you don't see too many teams get to double-digit numbers. So that's I bring it up to speak to just how enormous the task is ahead of us as we come into a game at lunchtime on Saturday afternoon. I know you were shocked by that when I brought that up to you off air. Has that settled in with you yet? It's just that just goes to show the magnitude of what we're dealing with the injuries. We're dealing with. The injury list has gotten quite large, and significant players on it this week, of course. With Butters out, Jack Lukosius is TBC as well with his Baker cyst and calf. Mitchell Giardi's protocols, Lockie Jones. I mean, the spine of the team is Zak Butters, Mitch Georgiades. Of course, Jason Horne-Francis, the club accepting his one-match suspension. But Horne-Francis, Butters, Georgiades, yeah, I can understand why the betting odds are the way they are.
Yeah, and when you consider no Rosie, which has been a normality for the majority of the season, but just to contextualize our four best players, or, Aaliyah, could, 4 of our 5 best players are out. You can understand why it's the perfect storm from a chance point of view, a betting point of view. Yeah, it really is a perfect storm. But in the realm of this season and in the prism of being able to take the good with the bad in the situation we're in transition, and the fact that we're probably the most praised and respected 15th place team in history, just about. The swamp life across Port Road are genuinely jealous about the praise that we're getting for being 15th, and keep heckling us that we're 15th like we don't already know and that we don't already care about. Doing it for Dougie. But it adds that ultimate level of intrigue as to what selections will be made, but how we will perform, because we've shown this season that we just keep fronting up. But also, there does come a time where you can be excused for just getting bundled to a severe extent. And so there's intrigue both in-house, being Port Adelaide fandom and supportership and members and club and whatnot, and then outside from an AFL fan point of view, it's just like, what's going to happen? But from a selection point of view, I believe it was Todd Marshall and was it Moraes who got held out of the game the other day, or was it someone else? I'm not quite sure. But so what are we looking at? George out, Butters out, Lukosius out. So Marshall is coming back in for mine. Zerk Thatcher has to come in just due to the fact that FREO have 3 tools. I think I'm in the Will Brodie revenge game camp personally. And I mean, a bit rough on him because it is a bit of deja vu for him, coming over and getting the treatment, like, playing seconds like he was for Fremantle. And Josh Carr did say he was going to play some AFL football before the season started. So perhaps this is a good time to do it. It's just whether, the Lockie Jones thing keeps him out or not, because not in a funny way, I think we need him. But in a funny way, in an alternate reality, if we weren't playing FREO and we didn't need him in defence and our midfield was stunted, I want to see Lockie Jones in the midfield. Probably never going to happen, but I just think he's got the speed and the power and the core strength to kind of make it like be a JHF kind of presence. Pipe dream, I know, but yeah. So I'm so intrigued. Like I said to you before, pre-record, this is a real showing up for the boys type of game from a member and a spectator point of view. I know we're both going, and it really is just the deep supportership showing up for the boys, because it could get bad, and I know that's a reason why people probably won't go. But in my opinion, this is a time where you probably should go. If you can, of course.
Yeah, it's going to be a beautiful day for footy as well. It's looking like a high of 18 degrees and sunny, so there's no excuse weather-wise to not get down there. You're not going to ask for a better mid-July day for footy to get to a game and take the kids out for free as well, with the kids go free stuff in the AFL in this month. So, there's not too many excuses, particularly being the middle of it's the back end of the school holidays, but it's a Saturday afternoon. So, obviously, local sports aside, get around it, get down there. We're going to see an interesting midfield mix like we haven't seen in 9 years. There's no horne-francis, there's no Rosie, there's no Butters, and previous to that, it was your Boaks, your Wines. Obviously, Wines will be in there, but it's going to be a midfield mix that we have not seen. So it's going to be really intriguing just from that aspect to just see some new blood, see some new mixes. So for nuffies like us, there's an intriguing aspect of it for us to see, even if the pain of it all is going to be painful, indeed, possibly. But that's about it for tonight. There's one more thing, Jamie, I actually wanted to bring up just at the back end here as we close off. It's been a big week for Mum's Basements in the past couple of weeks. Just a random thought to bring up at the back end of the podcast for the fun for those that hang around for this long on the podcast. Of course, we alluded to the fact that we had a Crows fan just absolutely lose their marbles at us on Twitter about Jamie and I recording our opinions on Josh Lyre versus Josh Rochelli and saying we're a couple of imbecile knob jockeys, I think was the terms, recording from a Mum's Basement.
There was a few terms.
Yeah. And then Damien Hardwick this week decides to go off on a Crows fan. I found this interesting because, and it'd be interesting to hear what you thought. I was just like, I know Dimmer's trying to make a point about people that say stuff, but I was like, you can't call someone that's at the football who's actually mouthing off at you in person a keyboard warrior from his mum's basement, because that's actually everything, the antithesis. What we usually say a keyboard warrior is someone that won't come out of the basement and say it to your face. And this guy at the footy, and from all I've seen, I think the only report I've seen is that he might have been like, oh, how's it going, coach of the year or something along those lines, which I think is just good banter.
Pretty tame.
I think Dim is a bit of I don't have much time for Dimmer at the moment. I think he drank a bit too much of his own piss back when they were winning premierships at Richmond. And as much as I love what he did for us, I don't have much time for him at the moment with how he reacts to these things. I think he's overreacts, and ultimately, it's a weird couple of weeks of Mum's Basement content for us in particular in this podcast. But I thought that was I thought that was weird. I thought that was weird areas, and I don't rate it as a comeback in a press conference to literally not understand what the Mum's Basement keyboard warrior stuff it actually is.
Yeah, I think in both cases, it was clearly people who were rattled, and Dimmer was rattled. Yeah, like I said, from something that was pretty tame. Yeah, but big, Google uptick on the use of Mum's Basement terminology. Yeah, really weird areas. Yeah. Gold Coast Football Club are in a bit of a world of pain at the moment, and Dimmer isn't doing very well to keep that ship on course, so to speak. So, yeah, Mum's Basement chat, you know, it's really clutching at straws type stuff whenever it's employed the majority of the time. So, yeah. And I see Dimmer, and I don't think any differently.
Yeah. No, it was interesting. Just thought it was very funny when I saw that press conference played, and I was just like, oh, we've been accused of Mum's Basement material recently, so welcome to my Mum's Basement. It's very teal. Anyway, I just thought that was a fun one to bring up at the back end of the episode. But yeah. Thank you, as always, to everyone that joins us every week, and particularly sticks around to this point of the episode where we talk about just some absolute trash shit
Mum's
like that for the
basements.
last couple of minutes.
And if your mum does have a basement, send it in. We'd love to see it. My mum has a cellar, not a basement, so because she lives in the Barossa.
Yeah, well,
I think it's mostly used for storage. Dusty storage. There you go.
Yeah. Well, yeah. As someone who lives in the Barossa myself, a basement is a statement of class here in the Barossa.
Yeah. We live in Australia. Like, what's going on here? No one has basements.
yeah. And the basements, I've been to a few basements in the Barossa, and there's some fine wines in those things. It's the exact opposite of the implication that is given in some of these instances. So yeah. I want to drink some wine now, so we should end this podcast. Thank you as always for joining us, and I look forward to joining you this time next week, and of course with the preview later this week as well. But I feel like there's going to be some heavy therapy in the next couple of weeks possibly, so stick with us, Port fam, Creed fam. We appreciate you as always. No matter what, it is always Carn the fucking pair.
Take the good with the bad, and what will be, will be. Good evening, and have a good week.